We're going to call to order for today, April 6th, 2021, for 7 p.m. Teams electronic meeting. Public input. Public input is for the purpose of permitting people in the gallery to provide input that shall no longer be than 30 minutes, unless approved by the majority vote of council. Each speaker may provide a respectful comment on any topic they deem appropriate, not necessarily on the topics of the agenda of the meeting. It may not speak longer than 2 minutes, but may have a second opportunity if time permits. Each speaker must not be allowed to speak regarding a bylaw and respect the public hearing has been held. And for the record, they would state their name and address. Not doing that. So we need a recommended resolution that the public input section be moved to the end of the agenda after public question period. Sorry?
Jumping in there too soon.
Excellent. Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Introduction of late items, seeing none.
Can I mention one thing? If it doesn't have to be done at this meeting, but a discussion around the Sayward ambulance service. There's some grapevine things going around about a change there, so.
I haven't heard anything.
Pardon me?
I haven't heard anything today.
Okay, I'll just add it to an agenda next meeting.
Do you have information you want to pass on today, Tom, or Councillor Tinsley?
From what I've heard from people who are connected to the emergency services, yes.
Okay, so we'll put that under council reports.
Okay.
Who's in the bathroom?
Okay, approval of agenda.
Sorry.
Recommended resolution that the agenda for the regular council meeting of April 6, 2021 be approved. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Do we have discussion? Opposed? Opposed? None, motion carried. Norm?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Councillor Kirchner, do you have some background noise going on there?
Just the TV, but it's quite low. Are you hearing it?
Yes.
Dale?
It's not TV.
Turn it
Not
down.
TV, it's
Sounds like
if they're going to the rest. If they're going to the restroom on your camera or close to where you are, then yeah.
No.
So minutes of the previous meeting, recommended resolution that the minutes of the regular council meeting on March 16th, 2021 be adopted. Motion?
I'll move that.
Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Petitions and delegations. That, here we go. That Chad and Osada Boats to present to the Village of Sayward 2020 the audited financial statement and audited findings report. Are you online?
Yeah, it's Derek Lamb here along with Gabby McDonald. Can you hear me okay?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, Derek.
Can hear
Welcome.
you, Derek.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you guys as well.
The floor is
Perfect. So I'll
Yeah,
just quickly speak and then throw it off to Gabby McDonald here. My name is Derek Lamb. I'm a partner at Chan Said Boats, or CNB. We should switch it just for pronunciation there to make it a bit easier for everyone. But we performed the audit. It's now complete. Gabby will go through the audit planning report with everybody here, or audit findings report, excuse me. And from there, we'll go through the financial statements. Before beginning, though, I want to thank Lisa and her team at the Village. I'll share with you guys, we do 9 municipalities up and down Vancouver Island, the audits for them. And you guys are the first ones to have your statements done and issued, and they've been done for some time now. So it's a credit to your team there to get them done as quickly as they have been. So with that, I'll throw it over to Gabby, who's going to share the screen and go through the audit findings report and financial statements with you guys.
Hi, everyone. As Derek mentioned, I'm Gabby. I was a manager on the file and was on site up in Sayward, working closely with Lisa to get these financial statements done. So as he mentioned, I'll take you through the audit findings report first and then the financial statements. So I'll just start by sharing my screen. Can everyone see that?
Not yet.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, I can see it.
Everyone can see that? Okay, good. I'll get started here then. So this is the audit findings report. And Derek mentioned that the audit is now complete. So what that means is we've completed all of the audit work, and all that remains is to have evidence of Mayor and Council's approval of the financial statements. So that would be with signatures, and signatures of the management representation letter, as well as signed approval of the unadjusted journal entries. And we'll be taking you through all of those items today. So if you have any questions about them, feel free to let me know.
Thank you.
So first off, I will take you through some of the significant matters that were a primary focus during the audit. So these are the areas that we spend a little bit more time on and are kind of a larger focus than some of the smaller audit areas. And really the areas that we'd like to bring to your attention. So the first item here is the capital assets. So this year, as I'm sure you're aware, one of the biggest projects for the village was the Newcastle Dam. And that's ongoing from, it started in 2018 and continued through 2019 and then continued again here in 2020. There wasn't as much work done in 2020, but planning continued, and this year there was a change in scope of the project. So that resulted in an increase in the original budget, resulting in an increase of about $208,000. So as of December 31st, 2020, that project is about 47% complete, with approximately $557,000 spent to date on that project. This year, there was only $5,800 spent on the project just because there was some weather and scope changes, and these resulted in some delays. So we'll see that project pick up again in 2021 with the hope of having it completed by 2023. And the village also had some other capital additions this year. So the first being the public works truck. So that was around $60,000. There was also the computer hardware upgrade for $9,800 spent this year. And there was a generator purchased for the water treatment plant, and that was for $44,000. And then again, the Newcastle Dam project with the $5,800 there. So as part of our audit, we pick a sample of capital additions in the year, and we will pick up the invoices or the supporting documentation for those capital assets. So we verify that the amounts are correct and that those capital assets exist by checking to the third-party invoice or contract or whatever it may be. And this year we vouched 73% of the village's capital assets to those supporting documents. So that's quite a bit of coverage over all of the village's asset additions. We also discussed the status of project with management just to ensure we have a complete understanding of where things are at and if they're classified correctly. So that would be this year, primarily the Newcastle Dam project, as it's the most significant of the village's projects. And just ensuring that we have a complete understanding of what's going on there and why there's delays and the change of plans, just to ensure that everything is accounted for correctly. So with that said, this year, the scope change for the dam, as I'm sure you're all aware, essentially brought the dam the dam is now being decommissioned. So that is a consideration for us because as of the year-end date, the original cost of the dam is still on the village's books. So because it's still there and it's still in use, it hasn't been written off this year, but that will likely change in the future as the dam is decommissioned and taken out of service and the new weir is constructed. So this year, because the dam is still, the dam project is still underway and still in construction, there's no amortization taken on the dam, and it's classified as a work in progress. And that's consistent with the last 2 years as well, because it's been work in progress during those years as well. So as a result of this work, there was no significant control deficiencies and no adjusting entries that were proposed. So the next item that I'll take you to is the prior period adjustment. So this one also relates to the dam and the funding agreement that the village has with the provincial and federal governments to fund the dam. So back in 2017, when the original agreement was created, the costs covered by the province were allocated to be 33% of all of the dam's costs, and the costs that the federal government was to cover was 50% of the costs. So that left 17% of the costs with the village to cover. But back when, in the last 2 years, as costs for the dam have occurred, and as funding was received and recorded, it was management had recorded 100% of the costs as revenue, instead of recording 33% relating to the province and 50% to federal. So there was an overstatement of revenue in 2018 and 2019, and an upfront contribution from the province that was received in 2017 was correctly recorded as deferred revenue, but then 100% of the costs were drawn down from that amount instead of only 33% to match what the province is actually covering for the Newcastle Dam. And then the remainder of the costs were recorded as receivable, where only 50% of the costs should have been receivable from the federal government. So this year, that treatment was identified since some of the costs had not been recovered yet from the governments. And there was an adjustment made to correct those amounts this year in 2018 and 2019, just to bring the deferred revenue balance, the receivables balance, and the revenue balances to the correct amounts. And it's important to note with this that it doesn't impact the village's cash position this year or in other years. It's primarily an accounting adjustment. So changing the deferred revenue amounts and their accounts receivable amounts and allocating them amongst the province and the federal governments correctly, and then fixing the portion that the village has contributed. So the 17% coming from the reserves to cover those additional costs. So this has all been reviewed, and we reviewed the funding agreement this year to note that those amounts are now correct. Performed a recalculation to make sure that everything now agrees to the funding agreements and recorded those adjusting entries. So you'll see in the financial statements there are lines that say prior period adjustment, and that relates to this. You'll see that in the 2019 and 2020 column, and going forward, this issue should be corrected. So taking you to the next item here, the final significant item from the audit is the deferred internet revenue. This was also brought up last year. There hasn't been a significant change from the position that we were in last year, but just to take you through that again, the village entered into a contract with Sayward Valley Communications and the Comox Strathcona Regional District. And under that agreement, the village was collecting a small amount of internet fee revenue from Sayward Valley Communications for use of the village's internet assets. And the village owns those assets along with the Comox Strathcona Regional District. So under that original agreement, those fees were collected and they were deferred over time. So they were never recognized as revenue. And the purpose of those revenues was supposed to be for use in the future for repairs and maintenance on those internet assets. So last year, the owner of Sayward Valley Communications sold assets to a third party and essentially terminated the contract prematurely. But unfortunately, this was not under the contract. There was no provision for early termination. So the village hasn't recognized that deferred revenue as revenue because it isn't technically revenue yet. And there's no indication at this point that those funds will be repaid to the original funders. So right now they're still sitting as deferred revenue, despite the fact that they may at some point be repaid to the organizations that originally funded the internet projects or the internet asset acquisitions. And this year, the village also is attempting to recover the internet fee revenue that was missed out on this past year, which was around $7,000 was not collected because of the sale of those assets by Sayward Valley Communications. So as part of our audit work over this deferred revenue, we obtained the original agreements between Sayward Valley Communications, the village, and Comox Strathcona Regional District, and just ensure we have a complete understanding of those agreements and the terms that are in place. And we also discussed with management the current status of these conditions and if there's been any updates, if there's anything new and anything changed compared to last year. And then we also recalculate what we expect the balance to be if those internet fees had been recovered this year. As I know, the village is attempting to recover some of those lost revenues. To date, they haven't been recovered, but there is a possibility they will be. So because of this, we recorded an uncorrected journal entry to record those revenues that were not collected this year, but may be collected. And there was no significant control deficiencies identified as a result of this audit item. So as part of our audit, we review the village's accounting policies and we ensure that they're appropriate. And just here we just state that we agree that they are appropriate for the village and that they're disclosed in note 2 of the financial statements. So you'll see them when we hop into the financial statements. So for audit purposes, we have 2 types of misstatements. I'm sure you've heard me kind of discuss some of the adjusting entries that we've done and the uncorrected adjusting entries that we've done. So there's uncorrected misstatements and corrected misstatements. Corrected misstatements are exactly how they sound. They are adjusting entries that correct and have been made. And uncorrected misstatements are those that have not been corrected. So they have not changed anything in the financial statements. And for audit purposes, all uncorrected entries are less than our audit materiality of $29,000. So in aggregate and individually, they do not exceed that amount. And it is also important to note that for audit purposes, we don't investigate any misstatements that are below our posting threshold of $1,450. But you should also be aware that there is no posting thresholds or materiality for fraud. So if we were to find fraud of $2, it would be brought to your attention and investigated. So the uncorrected misstatements have been included in this audit findings report and are to be signed as well. And if you have any questions about them, you can feel free to let us know. So for audit purposes, we also go through the internal controls that are in place in the village. So these are things like dual signatures on checks, review of bank reconciliations. That's what we call internal controls that the village has in place to make sure that everything is happening correctly and that errors are not missed. So during the audit, we gain an understanding of the internal controls that the village has, and then we perform a walkthrough. So we go through and we test those, well, we walk through those internal controls and review that they're happening as they should be. So during this process, we did identify some internal control deficiencies. We identified significant and other than significant control deficiencies, and these are included in the management letter, which is also in the appendices of this audit findings report. And we've gone through those with management in detail, so I won't go through them today in this meeting unless specifically requested. So with that, I will take us to the financial statements here. Can everyone still see that?
Pretty small.
Pretty small? Okay, let's see if I can zoom in.
There, that's better.
Okay.
Sorry, we're a little older.
Yeah, for sure.
So the font's got to be a little better. Thank you.
Is that better? Good. Okay. So just to start us out, this is the management report, just stating that management is responsible for the accounting system and internal controls of the village. And next we have our auditor's report. This is where we state our opinion for the audit, which is an unqualified opinion or a clean audit opinion. And I'll just take you through some of the significant items that are a little bit different this year. And if anything jumps out at you, you can feel free to let me know if you have any questions, or you can also save them for the end of this presentation, and you can feel free to let me know if you have any questions at all. So just to start out, you'll notice that the cash position of the village is quite a bit higher this year than it was last year. The village was sitting at nearly $1.6 million of cash at the end of the year. Whereas last year it was around 200,000, so that's quite a bit of a jump this year. And that was for a few reasons. First of all, as you can see, last year the village had around $860,000 of accounts receivable. So last year funds were spent and amounts were receivable for various projects, notably the water treatment facility and the Newcastle Dam. So those funds were spent last year and then they were received this year. So that bumps up your cash this year, and that's why cash was a bit lower last year. And then the village also withdrew around $200,000 of portfolio investments. So that's the next line item down, and that also increases the cash balance. And the village also had an annual surplus this year. So revenues were greater than expenses of around $300,000. So that also increases the cash balance here. Next, you'll note that long-term debt has increased a little bit this year, up at $106,000 from $62,000 last year. And that was because the village obtained a new MFA loan for the truck that was purchased, around $60,000. And that's presented in note 6, so I'll show you that there as well. And other than that, things were relatively consistent other than those items. Tangible capital assets are presented in more detail in note 7, so I'll take you through that as well. As you can see, they decreased a little bit this year, and that's just because of amortization that's taken on those assets. So I'll take you down here to the statement of operations where you can see the village's revenues and expenses. As you can see, revenues are down this year. And again, that's largely because of government grants that were received in 2019. As you can see here, in 2019, there was $2.8 million of government grants. This year, it was around $829,000. Last year, there was significant government grants because of the many projects that the village had going on, the water treatment facility and the Newcastle Dam, as well as the Working Waterfront Trail project. So those were funded by other government entities and resulted in the decrease this year. And included in government grants and transfers this year as well is the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant. That's also shown in Schedule 1, but the village received nearly $300,000 in cash from the province of BC for COVID-19, just to assist with covering the expenditures that resulted from the ongoing struggles associated with COVID-19. So apart from that, revenues were relatively stable from 2019 to 2020. A bit of a decrease in investment and other income, and that's just, as I mentioned on the up in the last statement, there was a withdrawal of funds from the portfolio investments, so that's why we see a bit of a decrease here. And then expenditures are presented a little bit more clearly in schedules 2 and 3, where it's they're broken out by these departments or these segments and by type. There was nothing too significantly different here this year, other than, I'm sure you're well aware, recreation and parks was down a little bit, and that was primarily because of closures of the rec center as a result of COVID. It was closed for much of the year, so there was a little bit of a decrease there. And we also had a decrease in general government services, down from 385 last year to 312,000 this year. And that was primarily actually due to a decrease in wages this year, just because there was a decrease in staff throughout a big portion of the year. So at the end of the day, there was $393,000 in annual surplus in 2020, and you can see that right here. Again, a little bit of a decrease from 2019 because of those government grants and transfers. And last year those primarily went to purchasing capital assets, so it didn't result in increasing the cash balance. So apart from that, we have the statement of cash flows, which I won't go into unless there's any questions on this. And we have the notes to the financial statements. So as I mentioned in the audit findings report, we go into detail here, the village's accounting policies. There's no significant changes here this year. So I won't get in detail with these accounting policies unless anyone has any specific questions. And then the remainder of the financial statements kind of just go into a little bit more depth into the numbers that I was going through earlier. So as you can see here, in accounts receivable, it's broken out by the types of receivables that the village had at the end of the year. Property taxes were a little bit up this year. And taking you down to long-term debt, here you can see the addition of the long-term debt for the public works truck. So we've got the addition here of 65,000, and that was, as you can see, the reason that debt went up, despite the village paying down $20,000 of principal on those long-term debt balances. And we also present a schedule of expected payments over the next 5 years. So you can get a little bit of an idea of how much will be paid down annually, around $20,000 each year. And here we present the tangible capital assets that are owned by the village. So you can get a good idea of what's in that large balance on the statement of financial position, totaling 10 million. So you can also see additions for the year. So in equipment, vehicles, and furniture, the addition was primarily that public works truck that was purchased. And then in water, we had the generator, and then a couple other smaller items. We also have in water the original cost of the Newcastle Dam. So as I mentioned before, the original dam is still in use and is being decommissioned. So it's still on the village's books. But when that dam ultimately is taken down and decommissioned, it will be removed from the village's books. So as of December 31st, the balance was around $80,000. So apart from that, there's nothing too different in the notes this year. Just a couple more explanatory items. Here in Schedule 1, we present the various government grants that the village received. And again, this just goes into a little bit more detail from the one big number that you can see in the revenue. So you can see the Small Communities Grant is one of the bigger ones that the village receives, $391,000 this year, relatively consistent with 2019. And then included here in other, that's gone up this year to $323,000 from $147,000. And that again is relating to the COVID-19 Safe Restart grant that the village has received. So here in Schedules 2 and 3, revenues and expenses are broken down by various segments. So general government, parks and rec, sewer, water, and the other various departments. And you can see the individual annual surpluses and deficits in these categories. So I won't dive too deeply into this unless anyone has any significant questions or any questions. And we also present 2019s here as well in Schedule 3. And then finally, we have Schedule 4, where reserve fund transfers and transactions are presented. So one of the items that I'm sure you'll note this year that's new is the COVID-19 reserve. And that is where the village has transferred the full amount of the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant for $268,000. This year, council has only allocated $5,660 out of those funds in 2020, and the rest of that amount, $262,000, remains to be allocated. And I believe council has determined how that will be spent, so that will come out in future years. And then apart from that, we have some of the typical amounts that are transferred and budgeted for. And I won't dive into them unless anyone has any questions. That brings me to the end of the financial statements. Does anyone have any questions?
Councillors? No? Sorry, I see a hand up. Is that CAO?
That's Tom.
Sorry, couldn't see. Councillor Tinsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering about the auditor's opinion on the amount of reserves we're setting aside for various long-term items.
Which items are you specifically referring to?
Mostly it's our infrastructure.
Okay, yes. I think I did actually have a brief conversation with Anne about this. Just a little bit of concern about ensuring the village has enough funds or enough reserves set aside for ensuring water and sewer infrastructure can be covered. Yeah, so that's a little bit out of the scope of the audit. As you can see, we've got the amounts presented here, and I know that that the village's assets are getting a little bit older now. It's definitely something that we could look into if specifically requested, but a little bit out of the scope of the audit.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
just comment on that too, Councillor Tinsley. One thing to add is that you do have $1.5 million cash sitting there, right? So that surplus is essentially sitting in your operating, a lot of it's sitting in your operating surplus right now. So if mayor and council do decide at some point to transfer funds to reserves, there are funds there for that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Sorry, go ahead, Gabby.
Oh, did I put my hand up?
No,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Are you done?
No, unless there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No, I believe we've asked all the questions that we needed to ask.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thanks again to Lisa and the team up in the village for all of your assistance throughout the audit. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you both for coming out, Derek and Gabby. Gabby, it was an excellent presentation, and thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you very much,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, recommended resolution that council, the presentation by Chad Noah Sad Boats be received and that the Village of Sayward 2020 audited financial statement be approved. Motion, please.
I'll move that.
Oh.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. And we have a discussion. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next is the Urban Systems Planning Team for the OCP review. Meet and greet. Schedule the review of household survey schedule. We have Sydney, Jake, and Zach. Urban Systems, are you on the phone? Are you on the line?
Yes. Hello, council.
Hi.
How's everyone tonight?
Great.
I believe Jake unfortunately was unable to join us, but I believe Dr. Pamela Shaw is on the line as well. Pam, are you present?
I am.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Council will be walking you through a brief presentation and then walking you through the survey that we have to receive input from council. Do I have share screen privileges? I believe I do here. I believe everyone may be able to see my screen now.
Yes.
Thank you. View full screen. So a little bit about Urban Systems before we launch into our project team. Urban Systems is a consulting company based in Kamloops originally, serving the communities in British Columbia and Western Canada since 1975. We work primarily with local governments across Western Canada and First Nation governments, but also work on occasion with provincial and federal organizations as well. We have two island offices to serve our clients locally. Sydney and I are located in our Courtenay office, and we also have an office down in Victoria as well. We're part of a broader team here today, and I'll let everyone introduce themselves. But Jake Hewson, who's not able to attend tonight, is the project lead. Myself, Zach Haig, I'm a planner based in our Courtenay office and work primarily with smaller municipalities and First Nations in Northern Vancouver Island. I'll pass it over to Sydney to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I grew up in Kelowna. I did a bit of work for the city of Kelowna working on their official community plan. So I've been through a process before. I'm relatively new to Urban Systems and new to the island as well. So yeah.
Thanks, Sydney. And Dr. Shaw.
Good evening, everyone. Very nice to be here at the meeting. My name is Pam Shaw. I'm the director of the Master of Community Planning program at Vancouver Island University. And I will say that Zach Haig is a graduate of the Master of Community Planning program and came into the program on a recommendation from Anne. So it's a nice little circle I feel that we have along the bottom of the screen here. So I'm very grateful to Mayor and to Council, to Anne as well, for considering the involvement of VIU students in this project. That's very much the ethos of the program. We want our students to do real work, that it's a practical benefit to small communities on the island, and that's how they'll become better planners. So thank you very much in advance for your consideration.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. Urban Systems is proud to be partnering with the Master Community Planning Program with VIU to bring the students into the community to help with the engagement components, as well as some of the drafting and research components of the OCP. Communities take well to students. They have a cheery attitude about them, and people seem to really enjoy sharing their views on their communities with students, and we're really looking forward to the new crop of folks that we're working with there today and the next few months. For Mayor and Council, what is an OCP, or an official community plan? It really is the highest level policy document that helps provide direction for communities, and they really inform and guide growth, in particular within communities, over a 20-year time horizon. They are visionary and future-oriented documents that answer two pretty big questions on what do we want our community to be in the future, and how are we going to get there? There is relevant legislation through the Local Government Act that outlines required components and elements within the OCP that we will ensure are touched on properly throughout the course of this process. Some project timeline, which I'll actually pass over to Sydney to share with you on the course of the project.
Yeah, so I believe Mayor and Council should have received a more detailed timeline, but I'll just go through it quickly right now. So we've pretty much wrapped up phase 1 so far. We've prepared a communication and engagement strategy. We were able to send out a notice in the community newsletter. We sent a staff primer on the background of an OCP a few weeks ago, and we've started our background research with the help of the VIU students, and we're compiling a baseline report just to give us some background on Sayward and help us inform policy later on. So moving into our phase 2 is going to be our first really focused on community engagement and engaging stakeholders and engaging council and staff. So we have a few things coming up, which I'll go into a little bit more later. Phase 3 will be drafting the OCP with guidance from staff. Phase 4 will be another community engagement phase, and we'll be kind of bringing the draft OCP to the community and to council and staff, and making sure we're on the right track and making sure it reflects the community's vision. And phase 5 will be September, so we'll be submitting the final draft to staff and council. So our immediate next steps, today we're hoping to go over the survey with you, and we'll send it out as soon as we make any adjustments. And then we're hoping to have it out for about 3 weeks, and then we will compile the survey results. And we are hoping to be confirmed with today, hopefully. We're hoping to have another meeting with staff and council, and put together maybe a workshop to understand kind of the high level visioning that council sees for the future of Sayward, to incorporate that into our reporting. The last 2 weeks of May will be targeted stakeholder workshops with stakeholders, primary stakeholders from the community, such as Comox First Nations, the BC Land Trust. And then in early June, we'll put together our first public engagement, which we're hoping, COVID and public health guidelines willing, we're hoping will be in Sayward at an outdoor event.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
One quick question. How are you sending out the survey?
Yeah, good question. We're hoping to do it, have it available online, and we're hoping to send out a hard copy so that people have the option of whatever's easier, and then they can mail it back in.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any other questions? No?
For sure. Seeing none, Sydney, would you care to share your screen so we can walk Mayor and Council through the survey?
Yes. Perfect. So I believe everybody received this beforehand. So I can just kind of run through the survey, and then we can go into discussion, or any suggestions or initial thoughts would be great. So yeah, the first part is really just focused on kind of demographic, where do they live? We've kind of discussed as the project team, and we don't want to, leave the Sayward Valley out, but this is really focused on the village of Sayward residents. But we understand that there may be they are part of the community as well, so that is something to think about. So we want to get a sense of who's responding. How long have you lived in the village? What aspects attracted you? In general, how would you rate the overall quality of life? These are really high-level general questions, kind of getting a sense for the community. And I guess people who have lived there a long time, how their quality of life has changed. And some long answer, we've kind of left a few chances for some long answer forms here. And kind of getting an understanding of who's living in the village of Sayward. So are there families, retirement, that kind of thing. And then we're going to go into the previous official community plan and see if some of these themes that were identified in the 2005 official community plan still resonate, or if we need to be moving away from some of them, or adjusting or adding new ones. So getting them to rate on a scale, very important to not important, each of these kind of high level statements. So the settlement and community, and then a chance to respond, environment, resources, economy. And then are there any other goals or themes that you think should be added? Just kind of generally to get a sense. And then more some visioning language here. What do you like best about the Village of Sayward? If you could change one thing about the Village of Sayward, what would it be? And then please share your vision for Sayward's future. And then this one is a little more focused on land use, but still at a quite high level. So commercial development, they would like to see more or less or stay the same, industrial, parks, trails, roads, active transportation, that kind of thing.
Sorry, is it possible to separate the recreation and healthcare facilities to recreation, healthcare facilities on a separate line?
Definitely.
Thank you.
No problem. And then we understand that the Village of Sayward got funding from FireSmart BC and Housing BC, or BC Housing, sorry. So we had added a few questions in here. So are you familiar with FireSmart? Do FireSmart principles apply, or do you apply FireSmart principles in your home? How great a risk do you feel your private property? How great a risk is to the larger community? And then we go into the housing section. So how do you feel about your current housing situation, your annual income? Do you own or rent if you own your home?
Sorry, one other jump in.
Yes,
Sorry.
of course.
On question 25,
Yep.
can you also add between 100 and 200,000?
Yes.
There are several homes here that were purchased for in that area from 10 years ago.
Sure.
And more. Thank you. Sorry to keep interjecting.
No, that's okay. This is what it's for. Yeah, and then average monthly rent. What year was the building you lived in built? If they know, if not, it's okay. And then getting a sense how many people, and then just general feelings about, you know, unaffordability, lack of rental options, what they feel could be the largest problem affecting the Village of Sayward in terms of housing.
And these, just to interject here, Sydney,
Yeah.
these housing questions are really to drive a little bit deeper in the details on the Strathcona Regional District's housing needs assessment that was at Urban Matters, which is a sister company to Urban Systems, helped prepare just a few years prior. And so we're able to now just dig a little bit deeper into the nuance of what is going on sort of in the housing sphere within the village itself. Driving into those gaps that in the data that was from just a few years prior.
I'm sorry, we have a hand up. Is that Councillor Tinsley?
It's me. No, it's Anne.
Sorry, CAO, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. I just wanted to add something for Zach. You mentioned the FireSmart funding that we received from the province, and as part of the project that we're doing here, we also received needs assessment funding, housing needs assessment from the province, and so that's an important element. Not just the funding that we got, but also the need that we'll have to sort of break down that needs assessment for housing. I think the questions here will do that.
Great.
I'm sorry, I was having difficulty hearing you, CAO. Was anybody else having difficulty hearing the CAO?
I'm having a hard time.
How about now? Any better? No?
Sorry, we're getting a lot of background noise, Councillor Kirchner.
Where that's coming from? The TV.
Yeah.
Sorry, CAO, can you try again, please?
Can you hear me now? Any better?
Very well.
You're very faint.
How about now? Better or worse?
An email.
If I may interject there, Mayor and Council, what CEO was Anne was mentioning that some of the funding that was provided there was through BC Housing for a housing needs assessment, and so that's where we get these specialized questions, or the need to have the specialized questions in particular around housing. And so it both helps show the funder, BC Housing, that the village is doing its due diligence in understanding the housing needs for the village more thoroughly, and so we're able to capture that within this this community engagement through the official community plan.
Thank you.
And I'll just go through the last, I think there's only 2 more questions, and this is just for future engagement to help us reach more people. How do you receive village news? And it may be helpful for future planning initiatives as well. And what is your preferred method of providing your input on the village's official community plan update? And that brings us to the end.
Oh, sorry, Sydney.
Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
I was going to say.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, so we have a relatively concise survey, just 32 questions, but we're really trying to dig into understanding the nuance and the vision that the community has. There's a lot of positive energy and a lot of intention from community members for choosing to live in the village of Sayward. And the questions are really geared towards understanding on our end as a project team what those magic kind of components are, so we can help understand the values and the missions that drive individuals, and so we can help really craft an OCP that will help steer the community towards the future that it is excited for. There are some noticeable changes that have occurred since the last OCP update, and there are some anticipated changes to occur over the next 20 years. So we're really excited to hear what the community has to say about the village that they call home.
Thank you. Councillor Tinsley, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 2 points. One is the mayor brought up an interesting point around the house. What did you pay for the house? You bought, if you own, and that price range. But the other, I feel, is implication is, when did you actually pay that price? I mean, that's a huge difference. Yeah. We have people who have been here for 20 years and paid next to nothing, just like real estate. So I personally think that's a very important issue. And then the only other point, and this might be a little bit of a niggler, we love the valley and the valley loves us, but we're the village and we have higher taxes and they have lower taxes. And so is there a way, because it appears to me that almost anyone could fill this out, right? Is there a way, and might be a tough question, to somehow verify that somebody's actually a villager that's filling it out? Or is that just kind of crazy talk?
Go ahead, Doctor. I'm sorry, Pam, you had your hand up?
Yep, that's super. Pam is fine, for sure. When we're doing the survey analysis, we can run the survey either with looking at all the results from it, or we can look at, we can separate out that very first question, do you live in the village or do you live in the valley? And what we can't know is, would someone from the valley say, I live in the village? So we can't find that if someone frauds the survey. But you have to, I guess, believe that I don't think there's a great groundswell of fraud for the official community plans survey happening in the village. So I have to believe that people will answer honestly. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's we cannot verify, but just most people are good at heart.
Yeah. Thank you.
Agreed. Does anyone else on council have any questions?
I would just like to, Sue Polson, I would just like to ask how you plan to take the subjective written material and turn that into measurable data. So if one person says that they don't want to live in Sayward because there's too many dogs that are not licensed, or and another person says that they love living in Sayward because they've got the freedom to have 3 or 4 dogs or whatever. So how do you plan to implement that in the survey? Does that make sense?
I could talk about surveys all night. So through the mayor for the question, it's such good questions. There's two things we can do, and one is it's called a keyword analysis. So if people are using these kind of words in this area, what kind of words are they using for another question? So we can try to match those up and try to get to what people are, what we feel is the core of what they're saying. But boy, you're absolutely right. Again, there's a subjectivity to it for sure, because we're not asking quantitative questions. We're not asking questions where, how old are you? Most people will answer that. Like most will answer it honestly and know what the answer is. But how do I feel? There's one question about how do you feel about your home, and we recently had to replace hot water tank. So that day I felt pretty bleak about my house. So if I would have answered that day, I would answer in one way. Today I'm pretty happy about things. So it's kind of trying to take an analysis of everything that everyone's saying and shaking out those things that seem to pop up more than once, or there seems to be a real fever pitch of emotion around them. So, but this is one part of the plan process as well. This is one part of the community engagement. So we're right at the beginning. Looking at my colleagues from Urban, people will have other opportunities to provide input as well. So, but yeah, boy, it's such a good question. There's a qualitative element to it, but it's also trying to get to how people feel. Right. So it's kind of the only way to do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on council have any questions? Okay. Anything from urban planning? No?
No.
Everybody's good? Okay, well, we're very excited. I'm very excited about this whole process. Yeah. And I'm glad that this is coming into play and it's going to be done by September. I think it's a big thing for the community. So thank you all very much. Thank you for appearing tonight. I appreciate you being patient and waiting for us. And you have a good day, and I guess we'll see you shortly.
Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
See you
you.
again.
Thank you for
Bye.
coming in.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So we have urban systems planning, that the presentation by urban system planning be received, and that council approves the proposal household survey and proposed OCP public engagement schedule. I guess there's going to be a small amendment in there to the changes that were suggested. Is that correct, CAO?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Baker. We will probably get the revised survey back from the committee tomorrow.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you at all.
Is that any better at all? No? Yeah, it's intermittent, so.
I got nothing. Okay, so we'll do an amendment to that on basically on the suggestions that were made during the presentation. So do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Correspondence. So recommended correspondence at A to G be received. And the council requests the government of Canada declare overdose crisis national public health and immediately seek input from the people most affected by the crisis and meet with provincial and territories to develop a comprehensive pan-Canadian overdose action plan, which includes comprehensive support and full consideration of reforms and other countries have used significantly to reduce drug-related fatalities and stigma. That the province of British Columbia permanently reinstates, and stigma. Let's have a motion, please.
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second it.
discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Also, recommended resolution that the province of British Columbia permanently reinstate the automatic $300 a month benefit for people receiving disability benefits and an income assistant to move to raise disabilities and income assistance to a livable rate that is above market-based measures, MBM. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Reports of committees, none. Mayor report. Just a quick note, everybody else you got the email that came out. Moe is granted an injunction. So it said it's a step in the right direction on a long road ahead. But congratulations to Moe, BC Salmon Farms. Unfinished business? None. Staff report, project and issue work plan, quarterly update, dated March 31st, 2021. CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Can you hear me now?
No.
Hear me now?
Oh,
Move the mic in, maybe. Move the mic in. Right in.
Any better?
A little bit.
Well, I don't understand. Norm and I
Hold
had
on.
a meeting.
That's
earlier.
better. That's getting better.
Okay, I'll yell.
Yeah.
Norm and I had a meeting today and it was perfect, right, Norm? So
Yeah.
Now it's perfect.
something to do with council.
Yeah, yeah.
now it's good.
Good, okay. If I could get rid of this in the middle of the screen. All right. Well, thank you for that. I wanted to say that you haven't seen this project and work issues plan since the December meeting. We bring it forward on a quarterly basis so far. And I realized that the first time you saw, many of you, or at least 3 of you, were first elected. So it might have been a little unfamiliar, but by now, maybe if you've had a chance to go through it, I'll just take you through essentially the work plan, and it's done in an Excel format. So on our screens, we can click on the buttons on the bottom and go back, 5 or 6 or even 8, 9 years. So it's a very comprehensive history of resolutions passed by council, this one and others, as well as a number of projects that have been funded or have been identified as being required. So it's tracked in that sort of format, major projects. And then of course the dam has had its own head title. And then projects including things like the official community plan update, the drainage study for McMillan, the road exchange for Van Brocklin, a bylaw notification. Some of these things have been on here for a while, and some of them we've added as council has given direction. And then there's a series of bylaws which have been identified as requiring an update, or at least to be reviewed. And so there's some updates for those. Generally, as staff updates this on a quarterly basis, we put the updates in bold so you can readily see what's new from the last time. And again, as you see this on a quarterly basis, you'll become a little bit more familiar with those updates. And then there's a section on grants, which identifies grant funding that's been received by the village and various progress on that work. So that would include the flood risk assessment, the BC Rural Dividends Grant, which was provided some time ago for the website, and then a number of other things such as the housing needs assessment, the Fire Smart work that we just talked about with the OCP, and a number of others. You'll notice there's a line item there under number 9 that talks about the variance reports. That's something that we also bring to you quarterly, but not at the same meeting as this update. So the next meeting on April 20th will provide the variance of the budget. And that's basically what was proposed to be spent and what's been spent today. So the difference between what's been approved and what's been expended. And then there's a section on policy updates. Those are policies that have been previously identified by council or by staff and then endorsed by council as requiring some update. And then the final section on the issues and project work plan is the resolutions with their number. So you'll see some of them go back to 2018, and then they continue on to resolutions passed by this council up to and including, I guess the last one was the Yukon Military Service Recognition Book Ad. That's the end one. So again, when we include the updates in bold, sometimes we suggest removal from the work chart. Again, that doesn't mean that it disappears forever, because as you go forward and go back in the Excel document, there's a tracked record of all the items, but it just makes the whole work plan a little bit more workable. It's about 6 or 8 pages now, and if we never took any completed documents off here, it would be a book of its own. So having gone through and then I guess the other column in the middle is the link to the strategic plan that council approved in 2020, which you were reviewing with us at the very beginning of the year. When we went through the financial plan at the very beginning of that, we included the same headings from the strategic plan so that the spending aligns a bit more with this strategic identities. And then that's pretty much it. We do sometimes assign a priority, but of course that's totally council's call to identify those priorities. Sometimes staff makes recommendations for things, but basically this is a work plan that staff use to seek direction from council on for priorities and to keep us on track of what needs to be done when, and to bring things back to you on a regular basis so that there's an update. So having said that, I don't think there's anything specific that I wanted to bring to your attention on this one, but you may have some that you want to ask about, or that have added or comments on the updates. So having said that, unless somebody other from the staff, like our CFO, has anything to add, I think we're just waiting for your comments and direction on the work plan.
CFO, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Council, any councillors have any questions? Okay. Councillor Paulson, did you want to mention this report is fantastic. It's I just shrunk. So it's that's the quarterly report. You mentioned before you wanted that there's an opportunity to have a brief update report monthly. Did you want to explain that, please?
What I was looking at was the monthly report that I get from the waste management meeting and the hospital board meeting on what is coming up. And it would be similar to what the list of things that we're currently working on that the CAO provided in case we had a chance to speak. The mayor and I had a chance to speak at the forum put on by Comox First Nations. So it listed the projects that are currently on the go and involve a lot of money and steps in getting to the end of it. So like the dam for one, and the strategic plan, and now the official community plan. So if we could have the most highly prioritized projects, and so that we can keep track of how they're coming and when the next update or meeting or whatever is scheduled to, so that we can keep track of it. It's really hard to keep track of what and when things are happening without flipping back and forth through the agendas and the minutes.
So in point form, Councillor Paulson?
Yes, just in point form, like the the dam project, and we know now that we're expecting that it's going to resume about the 1st of July. So, and about the COVID spending, we know that the plexiglass is done now, and but an update on the other things that we've requested for using the COVID revitalization money, so that the community and council is aware of, or just refreshes our mind where things are at and where we're headed.
Councillor Tinsley, do you have any comments on that?
I think it's a great idea. I've used them in business, what I call a rolling spreadsheet. So you have the items, and then what's the latest update, and everything rolls through and it's continually available. So I think it's a great idea.
Councillor Kirchner?
I agree. I think it's a good idea. Be able to keep track of it much easier.
Okay. CAO?
Thank you. I was thinking that the idea of a rolling spreadsheet that's available at all times might be really useful on our new website, or even on our current website, as we can update it on a regular basis on identified projects or issues that have evolved that our council wants to monitor. So yeah, that's something we can easily do.
Okay, thank you. We don't need a resolution or anything for that, do we? CEO?
We don't need one. It never hurts to have one. It's easy enough to do. And so it's always a good idea to do that.
Okay, would that be more of a policy?
Well, it might be a good idea when council makes a decision on the worksheet that we have here, to add another resolution behind that, to just indicate council's wish to have a rolling spreadsheet that provides for continuous updates on key projects.
Okay, thank you. So the recommended resolution is that council receive the projects and issue work plan from March 31st, 2021. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Another recommended resolution is that staff provide a rolling spreadsheet for major projects and spending to council on a regular basis. That sound about right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion?
I'd like to know, would we just access that on the website then?
Through the mayor to the Councillor Paulson, I think we will definitely have it on our new website. We will have a portal, and in fact, next week at the next council meeting, we'll have the company that's developing the new website doing a presentation for you tonight, similar to the one we just had. So they'll be walking us through that new proposed website template. So there will be a portal there for council to be able to access data directly. But it's also something that we could put on the public website so people can be as familiar with these major projects as well. And so there might be a little bit of a gap between when we get our new website, which will hopefully be at the end of April, end of May, or June sometime. So in the meantime, we can provide that. The wording that the mayor used was a regular basis. We could, I think earlier it was monthly. So we could start with monthly until we have access to the new website that would provide continual. And then it just would require us to do that update on a regular basis, which, I think would be relatively easy to do. I guess what would be helpful to get direction from us, what projects would be considered key. I think the dam, the OCP, the COVID spending, those are the three I heard. And then we can add.
Yeah, the drainage plan, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so amendment to that motion is that we receive that on a monthly basis at the first of every month, first meeting of every month. So let's do that again. Sorry, do I have a motion on the amendment and the regular motion?
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Policy update project, recommended resolution that council receive the policy update project report for information and discussion, and that council approve policy number 300-03. Oh, that's two separate motions, sorry. So the first one is that receive an update project report for information and discussion. Motion, please.
I'll move that.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Next is that council approves policy number 300-03, credit card policy as amended. Do you have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second? Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. The next is the request for tax relief for the Salmon River Inn. At this point, I'm declaring a conflict of interest, and I'll be leaving the meeting and turning it over to Deputy Mayor Tinsley. So
Thank
just
you,
wait
Mr.
until
Mayor.
Thank you. Just wait till I'm gone here. One moment,
Yep.
please.
Deputy Mayor Tinsley, could you hang tough for a second? I gotta take a little walk.
Certainly, Councillor.
I'm
Councillor
back,
Spurgeon
Mayor
is
Tinsley.
Back. There we go.
Yes.
I think our CAO has gone. CIO is back. And Councillor Kirschner shall return again.
Oh, I'm here.
There he is. Oh, he moved his camera. There we go. So everyone has received the background information about this request and the information and the recommendations from council. All right, sorry, staff. So I believe that we need to look at the recommendation for that council receives the request for tax relief for the Salmon River Inn report for information and discussion. And it would be in the discussion phase that we would then be able to complete that in terms of directing staff potentially on next steps. So I believe it's correct that I would ask for a motion as I've described right there to receive the request for tax relief and discuss.
I move.
I'll second that.
Okay. And so discussion, there are a number of items of recommendations from staff, well presented in terms of the background and information historically around the property and various options presented. So I'll move to Councillor Kirschner first. Do you have any comments?
No, I don't.
Okay. Councillor Paulson, do you have any discussion comments or?
Oh, well, you know, yes, Ms. Deputy Mayor, I have read through and looked at the different recommendations, and seeing the data provided from the previous owner in the letter of January 21st, 2020. I believe that the new owner entered into this agreement to purchase this hotel with full knowledge of how long the rooms had been rented, how many rooms and how long they had been rented out. So, and I do have difficulty with understanding his request to not do any work on the place for 2 years because of COVID, when he bought the place when COVID was in full-blown action. And so I have a view on what I would recommend. Mm-hmm. And it would be to not grant the tax relief that he's asking for. I would also like to know if he's going to wait for 2 years, what chance he would have of starting after COVID. It would seem like now would be a better time to start doing renovations and upgrades, so that once COVID is over, it would be available for making maximum use out of the hotel.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mayor
so,
Tinsley.
Yes, Councillor.
I just have a word?
Yes, of course.
I agree with Councillor Paulson. It's just, I think this person did enter into the purchase of that hotel full knowing what was going on, and to say for 2 years, I don't know how they could say that. So I just don't feel good about it.
Mm-hmm. So having other councillors' input here, my input would be that obviously this is a place of previous residents that is important to the community, but that we need to understand what the plans are for it. So I personally don't believe that we can make any yes or no recommendation at this time, but that the staff's option number 4 of requesting that the new owner represent what their plans are for the building be considered by council at a future date. There clearly is many economic changes going on since the hotel motel was built originally, and I agree with all what the councillors have said so far around our concerns, but I believe that potentially the fourth option as represented by staff is our best route to keep the doors open, but also take our time about any consideration of changes to this. So at this point, I guess our goal is to try and direct staff on next steps. And we've had some, we can certainly go back and have a little more discussion if the councillors would like, based on what I've said around option 4, perhaps that's the best. Councillor Kirchner, how do you feel about that? I don't think your mic's on.
I think if the owner made an effort to come in and address this, we could talk a little bit more about it, but it just seems like it's just sitting there. It's going to be derelict and be falling down.
So from what I'm hearing, I believe that hearing from them the plans, like none of us have a sense of what the direction is for the new owner. That would be of some benefit for us to review further.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Councillor Paulson, how do you feel about that?
I agree also that we should be open to hearing what the new owner has to say, and I'm all for that. I think we also need to keep in mind how the last attempt at providing tax relief went, and it was a learning experience for council, and but what we should go into this new arrangement or this new resolution, considering it, keeping an open mind, and hopefully this will resolve the issues for the owner.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I believe at this point I could suggest that we have a motion for the next steps, because I believe we've already done the first part of it. We've received the report that we propose a motion that by council resolution that we request the owner to attend council meeting at a future date to share his plans for the inn and to explore ways that there are potentials for us to look at. I'm changing the words a little bit here, to look at the options that he's considering relative to his request. Does that sound reasonable, CAO, or?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, alternate Mayor Tinsley. I think that sounds like a good strategy.
Okay. Could I have a motion to reflect moving that?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Councillor Paulson, second. So carried. And I believe the mayor can come back now.
I'll get him.
Thank you, staff, for sending me the invite. Okay. So the recommended resolution, did you go through that, Deputy?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so on to D. BC Building Code and Non-Compliant Properties Update. CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. I want to make a point of bringing us back a bit. I'm not sure if council intended to spend any time on the policy update submission, which was the agenda item just after the work plan and prior to the Salmon River Inn. It was a policy drafted by the CFO with respect to corporate acquisition cards. I think we might have whizzed past that a bit. I just wondered if council wanted to go back to that at all. Or is it just straightforward? No questions on that?
Did everyone have the opportunity to read it? Councillor?
Okay.
Councillor? Yeah. No, it was very straightforward to me.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. So then on the building code and non-compliant properties update, as council is aware, there were letters sent out recently over the past month to identify deficiencies and non-compliances with the building code and zoning bylaw. There's a number of various infractions that we wanted to bring to the attention of the property owners and seek their interest in bringing the property into compliance. So we've sent out 6 letters. 2 of them have been only recently sent out within the last week. So we haven't heard from those 2. However, I have heard and spoken with the other 4. Most of them we've come to some understanding about how to bring the property into compliance. So there's some willingness at least expressed to do that. And so we'll be working with those owners to assist them in getting their properties into a compliant state. So that's good. I think hopefully there'll be continued progress on that. But at least a willingness to work towards that is a really good goal because as council knows, bylaw infractions are very contagious and they can be quite damaging to property assessments. And of course, property assessments provide the largest sense of revenue to the village to be able to carry out its work in providing services to the citizens. So it's a bit of a Rubik's Cube. And so I'm really happy to hear that people are willing to come together on that one. So that's really all I have to add, unless there's any specific questions. That's pretty much it.
Council, do you have any questions? So
Sorry.
the first,
Just
sorry.
like my understanding is we're going to give direction on the next steps.
Well, if for some reason the properties don't come into compliance, then staff would return to council with seeking council's approval to place a notice on title. Mm-hmm. That's a section 57 of the Act. And the purpose of that notice on title is to, it's a registered interest against the property so that if the property is sold, and of course in these markets where people are buying properties without any conditions, including housing inspections or anything, it's really important to protect the village's liability so that it's clear that they don't meet the terms of the BC Building Code, which of course the village is charged with enforcing, and the zoning bylaw, which again is something that regulates density and building uses, land uses and that sort of thing. So if for some reason the goodwill that's been expressed so far by the property owners doesn't progress to actual work towards bringing the properties into compliance, we will come back. And I think probably 2 of the properties that have some building code deficiencies are quite significant, as well as the home protection warranty program not being in place, which again is a BC law. It would be in our interest to put a notice on title so that there's a notice to any future owners so that if for some reason their personal deal goes wrong, the village isn't looped into any legal case that revolves around those non-compliant issues. Of course, if we can help them out, then we won't have to go that route, and that's the preferred route.
Councillor Tinsley?
Is there a reasonable time frame? I'm thinking 1 month for results. I'd like to see a time frame. I'm not big on people who don't want to follow the rules and then beg mercy later. And I believe we need a time frame to protect our liability as well.
Yeah, so some of them have timeframes built into them. So for example, where there's, as you know, there's only two options to live for residential occupancy of an RV. One is 90 days and one is 365 when people are building a house. Both of those require permits. So we have provided the owners with a 90-day permit. So that is the time frame that they're working with on those particular issues. That's the residential occupancy of an RV, and you know, so hopefully that will work. The first one, you know, it won't be resolved within a month because the property owners are indicating they don't plan to live in it. And it won't be used as a storage property. So we're going to have to sort of play that one out. But the other one will be resolved hopefully within 3 months. Either they'll move the RV or the property the people will be living in the home. The other two, though, on Sayward Road, those are structural and fairly major, and I don't see being resolved within a month. I think those two, we probably will have to go with the notice on title. There's some major deficiencies with the building code, and we're really up to BC Housing to work with the home protection program. They're doing the investigation themselves, and we're at their mercy to complete that in terms of the timing. But we can come back in a month and report on progress, and then council can direct that we proceed to the notice on title at that point. But I definitely know that it'll be very difficult for those property owners to bring those properties into compliance within a month.
Okay, so, sorry, Mr. Mayor, could I speak again?
Please.
So through the mayor to the CAO, in terms of beyond the 90-day one, which is a requirement, I understand that. The ones that are in clear violation, I believe we should just move forward right now.
Yeah.
We need to send a message to the community that this is unacceptable. There's no need to play any games. These people know what they're doing and the game they're playing.
I'm sorry, which property you're referring to, Councillor?
Any of the properties beyond the 90-day ones that are in serious violation of building code need to have notice on title right now.
CAO?
That sounds fine. There's a process for us to go through in the Act, and I might have included it in here. I had it in an earlier version, but it looks like I've taken it out. There is a very clear process to put a notice on title that includes notification and that sort of thing. So I'll bring that back for the next council meeting with the details of that and the timing for that. That will be for sure item number 3 and 4. 5 and 6, you know, yeah, we probably need to do something with both of those as well. So we'll come back on the 20th with an update for those properties.
Thank you. Just one. So my message is just clear violations, enforcement, whatever the process is, needs to happen.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. So the recommended resolution, number 1 is that council receive the information, provide direction as required, and that staff be directed to add tasks associated with the following non-compliant properties to the projected issues work plan to provide an update for the next quarterly update report in August 2021. However, there's an amendment to that to be updated at the next meeting, and any non-compliant over the 90 days, we take the necessary steps forward. Is that correct?
Well, Mayor, there is a third resolution there that staff be directed to return to council the recommendations for plating notice on title on non-compliant properties. I wonder if that would suit the intent.
I believe that would. Councillor Tinsley, do you agree?
I agree.
Okay. And that finally, staff be directed to return to council with recommendations for placing notice on title on non-compliant properties. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
I'll move.
Second? Second? Thank you. Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion's carried. Now we're going to review and update the council procedure bylaw 416 from 2015. So Councillor Craig had a several page that he wanted a debate on today to make motion for on the 20th. Now, has every council member had the opportunity to read through them?
Yes, I have.
Yes,
Councillor Wilson, Councillor
Yes.
Tinsley? Perfect.
yes.
Now, by reviewing them, do we? Okay. Should we start with interactions and administration, number 1? Anybody have any questions regarding number 1? Or shall we expedite this process by saying, after review, does anybody have any notes or any topics they want to discuss regarding Councillor Craig's submission?
I would like to interject something there, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay.
Sure, please.
Most of what he has written down, council, as far as I know, to do with the CAO and instructing staff what to do. That's been common knowledge for this council. I just think it's all for naught, that part of it.
Okay. And what about the other parts, Councillor Kirschner?
Yeah, well, that's a little bit different, but I just can't see hammering on something over and over and over for the last 3 CAOs or whatever about council instructing the CAO and staff what to do with their job.
Let me ask the CAO, has there been any issues that you feel that it would be important to have these in the new procedural bylaw that you've run into from this current mayor and council?
No, I mean, I'm not sure what Councillor Craig was getting at with some of these, except that he liked some of the sanctions that were included in the Maple Ridge bylaw was what I got from his presentation. So it seemed to be more about, summing up. Well, or just, I think addressing maybe, I'm not sure. Honestly, it's hard to say without Councillor Craig here. He was intending to present this and to give the context around his purposing.
Understood.
But it didn't come from me.
No, I understand. But the procedure that we had in place from the last council meeting was April 6th meeting, we would debate it, and April 20th, it would go to vote. Is that not correct?
Correct. That's right.
Councillor Paulson, do you have anything to add on these?
I do believe that there should be some consequences for behavior at council meetings. I don't know that I agree to such strong recommendations for suspension and that sort of thing. But I think we do need to have some sort of consequence, because we found with other bylaws that if there isn't a consequence listed or included in the bylaw, then it just goes back to the same old thing, reviewing and people being reprimanded, but there's no consequence. So I would suggest that we put this on hold once again until Councillor Craig can present it at the next meeting. I know it delays it longer, but I think it's only fair in his defense, the work that he did on this, that he has a chance to explain it in greater detail.
Councillor Tinsley,
My position would be that I believe we can move forward with the original resolution. And to Councillor Paulson's point, look at this in the future, at the next meeting, farther down the road. But I don't see the need currently for this additional detail beyond what currently we could move forward with now. But I do believe it is worth, per Councillor Paulson's point, discussing further, but not at this time. And I'd like to move forward on the resolution just to update what is currently there as previously presented.
I believe that in the future, if when we do revisit this, whether it be next month or whenever, council can make an amendment to the bylaw. So it's not necessary, I think, to have the whole bylaw put on hold for that. So at this point, what we're going to do is we are going to bring it to a vote, and we can do amendments, whether it's on the 20th or in the future, to any points that Councillor Craig wants to debate or discuss. So the review and update of council procedure, bylaw 416, that council received the additional materials provided by Councillor Craig to be included in the proposed revisions, and that council be advised of the next steps of revision of the bylaw 416 from the 2015 bylaw. So do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? Opposed? Carried. Hearing none, motion carried. Bylaw 2021-2025 financial plan, bylaw 472, 2021. Recommended resolution that the 5-year financial bylaw 472, 2021 be given fourth and final reading. Do you have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. New business?
Oh, let's see.
Councillor Paulson?
I just wanted to look back at number 9, council reports, where Councillor Tinsley was going to report on the status of the ambulance. We didn't cover that, did we? It was brought in as a late item.
No, we did not. Sorry, my fault. So we'll go back under new business for Councillor Tinsley on your report, please.
So my verbal report is that some members of the community who are connected to emergency services have expressed real concern, and I believe it's accurate, given the people, that there is an assessment taking place through the BC Ambulance Service around, as I understand it, the fact that the service here uses trainees, and or something like that, and there's some kind of plan that maybe they don't want to do that anymore, and that there would no longer be a need for the service here in Sayward. My response to these individuals was, that's the first I've heard about it, and that it would surprise me that this community and that service and some of the other services that we have, being an hour or so north of Campbell River and partway up, would ever be considered for whatever reason to change. But it was a clear communication from people who seem to be or are directly involved with the emergency services of a concern. Citizens.
Thank you. CAO, could we follow up on that?
Yes, we could certainly follow up on that and bring it forward at the next meeting.
Please. Also, CAO, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. On the last item with respect to the procedures bylaw, of course, everything council does is by way of a bylaw. So the way to amend a bylaw is with another bylaw. And I think at the March 16th meeting, we had bylaw 472, which was to, or not 472, it was, I've got it up here. Council won't have it in front of them, but we would have had on the agenda on March 16th the bylaw actually to amend the procedures bylaw. So you've approved the resolution based on the staff report, but we also need to add council procedure amendment bylaw 471 and the resolution that council procedure amendment bylaw 471 be given first, second, and third reading tonight, if that's council's will.
I believe we'll find out. So recommended resolution that bylaw 471 be given first, second, and third reading. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried.
Thank you.
That covers it off, CAO?
That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Public question period. You have a maximum of 15 minutes. The purpose of the public question period is to permit people in the gallery to ask questions about the issues discussed by council during the meeting. Speakers will be allowed to ask one question if time permits. After everyone has had the opportunity, they may ask a second. Speakers will be allowed to ask a second question. There we go. For the record, they would state their name, and we have a submission from Daryl and Jackie Lyons, CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Did you want me to read the letter or summarize the requests, or what's the will of council on this? I guess I'll read it.
Thank you.
So, dear Mayor, Councillor Polson, Tinsley, Craig, and Kirschner, please be advised that we as residents of the Village of Sayward would truly appreciate updates at each council meeting as to how things are progressing within the village. It seems many motions have been passed for numerous things, but we never seem to hear how they are going or at what stage they are. Monies have been allocated to be spent in a certain area, but we do not hear how that project or stage is at. Each one of the councillors was appointed a position to act as the liaison with certain groups within the greater SRD. We have not heard how these groups are doing each time the mayor asked for a council report. The answer in most cases is none. Are we led to believe that over either a 2-week period or in some cases a month-long frame that none of the councillors have spoken by phone or video camera, any of those groups? I find that hard to believe, yet we get no update. Councillor Kirschner on the February 4th, 2021 meeting was asked by the mayor that the mayor believed that Councillor Kirschner had a report from the week before. The councillor's answer was yes, but it is not ready yet. We have not heard that report to date, and many council meetings have since passed. Is there really a good reason we have not heard this report? I am sure that Councillor Kirschner has had more than enough time. That report and an update of all things going on at each council meeting would be appreciated, as well as keeping open and transparent going on with council. This may seem to require some work to begin with, but with a simple few answers at the meeting will clarify for the residents what is going on. Jackie Lyons. And that was dated March 24th. Actually, March 31st when it was received.
Thank you. One of the things, and I know I'm guilty of it, is by not providing a report every 2 weeks. Now, there are times where there really isn't anything to report. For example, with the SRD, there is sometimes where a lot of the stuff doesn't concern the valley, or pardon me, Sayward Village. Now, I know that also there's been some concern about verbal reports I believe Joyce Ellis put forward. And I know it's something that I'm guilty of, and I think that we need to do a better job, and I need to do a better job of bringing those forward in a written format as well. So, but when we do say we have been to a meeting and we do have a report, then I think it's in our responsibility to bring it forward in a timely manner. Does anybody on council disagree with that?
No, I don't, but could I interject my answer to that letter, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly. Go ahead.
I've got a report in my hand from the last library meeting, and there's 4 main initiatives. And rather than me read them out at a meeting, the whole report is 181 pages, so I don't think we'll do that. But I have about 4 or 5 pages that hit on the main parts of it, and I'll get some copies made out tomorrow and hand them around to council.
I think
and one or two posted in the village.
Thank you. I think if you save those for the next meeting and we put them on right on the agenda under council report, so they have the hard copy on the agenda, I think that'll be sufficient. Councillor Kirschner? CAO, do you agree?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Yes, and I can assist with getting those reports prepared and ready for any councillor who sends me the information. We'll come up with some kind of a template, which is quite fillable and easily completed. That would make it easier for councillors to report on their various activities on these committees, so that we can meet the express needs of citizens on this.
Perfect. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to discuss regarding that letter?
Could I just add? Sorry.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just a suggestion, but I mentioned briefly, we are still in COVID times. Depending on what committee the person is on, or if they're backup for someone else on a committee, I believe that sometimes our citizens perceive that we're, responsible for something that we're not. So I just have a suggestion that what I believe would be helpful to everyone is that if it's possible on the reports of the committees, just to put, the name of the committee and the person on the agenda, and then the person can respond, there has been no meetings, or there has, I'm the backup, or whatever like that. So that's very clear to the public who's responsible for what committee. Did they have a report? Was it in writing? Was it a verbal report saying there was no meeting? And then it's clear, who's doing what and how they're reporting. Just a suggestion.
I agree. CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Baker, and to Councillor Tinsley. I think would it be helpful to have a template that would be available to councillors if they do attend a meeting where there is relevant material, and otherwise just put nothing on the agenda, or put the councillor's duties and the meetings? And I didn't quite understand how we'd structure that on the agenda.
Well,
there was no form.
I'm not trying to make more work. So it's something that's workable, so the public can see this is the person responsible for this, and there is no report at this time, or there was no meetings. Okay. Your template idea works as well, where the councillors can input that. These are just what I call blue sky ideas to make it more transparent, so that individuals such as the one writing this letter are clearly understanding that it's not like we're not doing anything. It's just there is nothing going on right now, right?
Well, it's similar to what we have under number 9 under council reports. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Councillor Paulson and her report of the Strathcona Waste Management Board. B could be Councillor Tinsley. No, there has been no meetings. C could be Councillor Kirschner, and sort of like just point form.
Is that administratively too much for an agenda creator? Like, if it's the person, like that list that came out saying what we're responsible for, if that is just there on the agenda and then we're able to say, I have a written report for that, or no meeting for that, and it's just kind of, we quickly go through it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
CEO,
I thank you, Mayor Baker. So what I understand Councillor Pinsley to say is that we would have the various committees, so we know who's been appointed to what. In fact, I've got the list here in front of me. So to identify, for example, Mayor Baker, Strathcona Regional District, no report, or to identify that. And so in fact, we can actually go a step further and have a sense of the calendars for these meetings, and put the dates in brackets so that when there is a meeting, we can follow up directly with the councillor to give them the template and assist in getting it completed, so there's a written record maybe.
That's
That might
good.
be something that would help.
I agree with that. Councillor
Yeah.
Polson, do you agree?
I do agree. I think it's a good idea to put in a written report. I know I felt really good about getting my written report in this time, although it was backed up to when I first began. But there's a lot to learn about each committee, and there's also a lot of information that comes out of committee meetings that I think that the Sayward residents would be interested in. And so getting that information out is really important. I think maybe posting a list on the website of which committees people are assigned to or attend would be helpful for the residents if they have any questions around garbage pickup or what the SRD is doing. Then they can look up and see, well, who can I contact about that? The hospital board, who can they contact about issues that they have with healthcare, that sort of thing. I don't know about, I'm not so sure about having it taking up all that space on the agenda for just saying no report. But I do think submitting written reports when there is something that involves Sayward is really important, so that the people know about it. And just as a little addendum to the written submission from Jackie Lyons, I'd like to let you know that she did send me a thank you and say that she was very happy to read the report. She picked up the agenda and minutes ahead of time, and so it's really inspiring to know that people are reading what we're doing. So, I think as long as we can keep them informed, it's a two-way street, and they know who they can contact.
I agree. Councillor Kushner?
I agree. You bet.
Sorry, Councillor Tinsley, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add, to come back, these are all excellent points around one area of it. Just to come back to where the writer mentioned that about concern about what's going on with projects where we're spending money. I believe that per previously discussed in this meeting, that our rolling spreadsheet concept will allow citizens to see, this is what's happening, this is, this next month, this is what's going on with this project and these monies. So I believe that addresses the other part of the writer's concern in this letter.
I agree.
Yes, I agree too.
CEO?
Yeah.
CEO, you agree?
Yeah, sorry, yep, so I think that'll take care of it, and I think it'll be really informative for people to keep track of, it'll be helpful for us too.
Yes, yes.
Agreed. Okay, well, thank you. So number 17, in camera? None. 18, adjournment. Recommended resolution that the regular council meeting for April 6, 2021 be adjourned. Do I have a motion?
I'll
Second.
move that.
Do I have discussion? Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carried. Thank you very much. I know it was a long meeting, but I appreciate everybody's input. You guys have a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll talk
Good
soon.
meeting. Good
Care
night.
all.